like my shirt. It's kind of sad looking in the back. It's a sad little guy, but it's by one of my favorite singers, Bryce Orange County. So I like wearing it. It makes me feel special because who cares? Well, I do. Let me talk to you very quickly, as quickly as I can, I guess, about some of the books that I read this month, since we're almost to August. It's almost August. Super summer season. Ooh. I feel like it could be a lot more fun to kind of sort the books into categories. So if I was to say the most entertaining book that I read, a book that I had high expectations for, or a book that exceeded my expectations, yada yada yada. Let's try and do this. Okay. Let's start with the most boring book I read this month, and that I'm sorry, but that has to be The Woman in the Purple Skirt. What a snooze fest. This started out so interesting in the back. It says, the woman in the purple skirt is being watched. Someone is following her, always perched just out of sight, monitoring which buses she takes, what she eats, whom she speaks to. But this invisible observer isn't a stalker. It's much more complicated than that. I thought it had me. I mean, I didn't expect it to be a thriller, but I just thought it would be a lot more interesting than it actually was. Yeah, it's just it didn't do anything for me. It was just really, really boring. I was not entertained or informed, and those are the two main things that I expect from a book. Snooze, you lose. The opposite to that, so the book that I had the most fun reading, and there's different kinds of fun that I guess you can have, that was Court of Mist and Fury. I started reading this series as a kind of a silly little thing. I was curious. I had a bad case of FOMO, and the first book was a lot of fun already, and I'm not too much of a fantasy reader, just because I get really intimidated by the entire size of the books and how much world building and just everything that goes into that genre. But that one was so much fun. This book gave me what I expect from an Emily Henry book. It was so fun. It was so entertaining. It kind of dragged on a little bit in the beginning just because there's so much more of the backstory that is being explained, but that was fine because at some point it just took off and it never stopped. My mind was going awooga the entire time. Chapter 42. If you know, you know. Another book that I really, really enjoyed reading, that's one that I've had on my shelf for quite a while, that is The Mad Women's Ball by Victoria Mas. She's a French author, and this was translated from the French by Frank Wine. There's actually a movie out to this, which I didn't realize when I bought this book. But this was a perfect blend of feminist literature, asylum vibes, historical fiction, and just kind of sense of empowerment you want to get when you read about women suffering. That made me feel the feminine rage in the best way possible, and I would highly recommend reading this book to anyone. Read this if you're interested in historical fiction, exploring the darker sides of society back then. Next category for a book where I wish I could have, should have DNF this, is Transatlantic by Colin McCann, and I'm so sorry to say this. It dragged on forever. I get, after finishing it, I know why the first part was written the way it was. It's just, I hated it. I hate how much it dragged on. And I could appreciate it I appreciate the effort. I don't like the execution. And if it was not for a seminar, I would have and should have just DNF'd this. Ooh, one that I've already briefly talked about, and that is one that falls into a category where this did not exceed my expectations, and that is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Again, I thought this would give me Greek mythological retelling. It didn't. I feel like it was very abstract. It was trying to say something without saying it. I guess this is kind of a book where you either like it or you don't, and I am maybe one of the few who doesn't. If you maybe like very abstract, very philosophical storytelling, then maybe this could be for you. Maybe. Ooh, okay. And another category. Such a pretty book cover that I thought this would be a 5-star read. I did have a good time, but I ended up just giving it 4 stars. And that is The Rachel Incident by Carolyn O'Donoghue, who is an Irish author. On the back it says, "The Rachel Incident is an all-consuming love story, but it's not the one you're expecting. It's unconventional and messy. It's young and foolish. It's about losing and finding yourself, but it is always about love." That description does a really good job of kind of explaining what the book is about without saying anything. It felt like a rom-com without being too much on the nose. It was a very fun story to read about. Kind of felt like a movie. If you were to go on vacation and you wanted just a silly little story about some young people struggling with love, I would recommend this book to you. It was a good book. It was very fun to read. Again, I just wish I would have cried in the end. Next category. And the category is Eleganza Extravaganza. I declare the next category to be, okay, a book from an author who I already know, and that is The Pisces by Melissa Broder. It was fun. It was absurd. I didn't like it as much as Milk Fed. It was triggering at times, but luckily for me, silly enough, so it didn't affect me too much. If you were to give Melissa Broder another shot, I would try reading this. It was funsies. The next category would probably be for a book that I inhaled. I read this so quickly, I didn't feel like I was reading it. So please give it up for And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. I borrowed it from a friend, and that is definitely a book that I would like to own in my personal library. I'm not sure that I fully understood how it ended, how it got explained. Whenever you talk about the book, or whenever I talk about the book, I keep coming back to the ending and just how the whole story was set up and how well it was written. It was written so well. I definitely want to try another Agatha Christie book after reading that one, because I didn't like Crooked House too much, but this one was really fun to read. And if you think you know how it ends, trust me, you don't. So much for that one. The next book is a book that I've been eyeing for a very long time, just because I like it. I like the cover. I was mediocre. Maybe we could place Diary of a Void by Amy Yagi in the category of a mediocre book. This one was an up and down. Ooh, it had so many fun little lines where I was giggling a little bit, as one does with a good book. It's a book where you don't understand whether this is magical realism or a literary fiction. Very confused. Still very confused about this book in the end. What? But yeah, it was funsies, but nothing more, I guess. And those should have been 1, 2, 3, 9 books, I think. Before I stop this, let me tell you about the 3 books that I'm currently reading. There's reasons why I'm reading 3 books at the same time. The first reason you will probably, hopefully understand or relate to, this little baby right here. I mean, come on. You cannot keep reading this at all times. I don't know why. I'm tearing up. Nothing has even happened yet. I just feel very anxious whenever I think about or talk this book, but currently reading that one.
Fine. Totally fine.
Then I'm also reading a new, not new, but for me new, Kazuo Ishiguro book called The Buried Giant, and I'm reading this as a buddy read, so I have to pause at times, otherwise my buddy reading partner won't be able to catch up with me. But this is so much fun. This is supposedly a fantasy book, and I know why, I guess. I just love reading his books. They're just so, they're different. They're not like other books. Just having so much fun with this one. And then a third book, nonfiction book called Entitled by Kate Mann, explores different parts of male entitlement and how male privilege hurts women. And that one is very interesting to read so far. I have marked a couple of, am I doing this right? Paragraphs already, and I feel like this kind of motivates me even with my research for my thesis. But yeah, that is that. Thanks. Bye. Bye. Bye.